Well, there you have it, folks. The Mandalorian and Grogu is officially a box office bomb. As if many of you are all that surprised by this news. I mean, some of us said it was going to happen. This article is from Euronews. I will include it linked below if you want to check it out and read it for yourself. It says, bad news for Star Wars as The Mandalorian and Grogu becomes lowest box office opening for series. Yes, the film has an even lower opening domestic weekend at the box office than Solo: A Star Wars Story from 2018. And that is quite a while ago now. That's the second last Star Wars movie. Obviously in 2019, Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker came out. Although it didn't make nearly as much money as 2015's The Force Awakens, which was the first film in the sequel trilogy. That was the first movie that Disney made in the Star Wars universe. A kind of a law of diminishing returns has set in when it comes to Star Wars at the cinema. It says The Mandalorian and Grogu, the franchise's return to the big screen after 7 years, has scored the lowest box office opening for a Star Wars film since Disney took over the IP. And as you know, Solo: A Star Wars Story was a total box office failure. It failed to recoup its enormous production budget. We've talked about that several times now. Even though The Mandalorian and Grogu has a far smaller production budget of $165 million. Now, that doesn't include the marketing costs for the film. But still, I suspect the film is going to need to make at least $500 million worldwide in order to break even, because of how box office earnings are split between studios and the movie theaters. And given this opening weekend, which is lower than Solo: A Star Wars Story, a film that made less than $400 million worldwide, it looks unlikely. It looks unlikely that The Mandalorian and Grogu is going to make enough money to break even. So that's the problem. The film, which stars Pedro Pascal as the Mandalorian bounty hunter, accompanied by his tiny companion Grogu, made $102 million at the domestic box office, that's North America and Canada, over the US's 4-day Memorial Day weekend, contributing to a total of $165 million global box office. That's lower than Solo: A Star Wars Story, 2018's critically maligned Han Solo origin story, which managed $103 million over the same Memorial Day frame. So, although that looks like it's only $1 million less than Solo: A Star Wars Story, critically, what you have to factor there is inflation from 2018 to now. So, when you consider that, so for example, if you go to usinflationcalculator.com and we look at $103 million in 2018, in comparison to now, that is now $136 million. So I think that's very important to consider. Those numbers were considered disappointing at the time, making Solo Disney's lowest grossing Star Wars film. And so now, The Mandalorian and Grogu is even lower. So yes, if you adjust for inflation, Solo would have made a little bit more. But I think ultimately, this all confirms that there was very little appetite for this Mandalorian and Grogu movie. And I don't know why they thought it was a good idea to make a Mandalorian movie. Although maybe they were planning to do season 4, and maybe they were looking ahead at the production schedule, and they thought, you know what, we could use another Star Wars movie. Why don't we just turn season 4 into a film? And that's what it kind of feels like. That's what the film feels like when you watch it. And so they possibly compressed a few episodes into a movie. And I think this was never really going to succeed in the current climate with respect to this franchise and where it's been over the past few years. There's a lot of audience apathy now. due to several poor Star Wars TV series, and I think also the disappointment of the sequel trilogy films, in particular from really The Last Jedi onwards, although The Force Awakens had its problems, and looking back, I just can't stand what they did with the relationship with Han and Leia and killing Han the way they did. You know, and then in The Last Jedi, making Luke Skywalker this loner who's just broken and alone on this island somewhere. Yeah, and then of course you had Poe Dameron being talked down to and emasculated in The Last Jedi, and Rey being this total Mary Sue. There was just so many problems with those films, and you know and then they ultimately made Rey the embodiment of the entire Jedi in the end of Rise of Skywalker. So there was a lot of things there that hardcore Star Wars fans did not like. Yeah, it was just ridiculous. It was just ridiculous. It was just the wrong way to go with the conclusion of that film. But there you have it. And I think it's like The Rise of Skywalker really took the Force is female thing a little too literally. And then you add to that the likes of The Acolyte, which was a Star Wars TV series cancelled because it was just so bad. And then the failure of Solo in there in 2018. And it's not surprising that there's just very little excitement now for a new Star Wars movie. And certainly The Mandalorian and Grogu didn't seem like a very good concept for a film to begin with. In fact, the whole build-up for this film, the marketing, it just felt very muted. You know, the trailers didn't have much impact. There wasn't much anticipation. There wasn't much buzz or excitement. And to be honest, I don't know what can be done at this point to turn the Star Wars franchise around, to return it to its former glory. I don't think you can, and that's okay. There's another movie on the way next year, Star Wars Starfighter, starring Ryan Gosling. And maybe that will be better. Something different, something fresh for the series. But sometimes a saga has simply run its course. But try telling Disney to stop making new Star Wars. I don't think they're going to do that. I think they're going to keep going. But will lessons be learned? And I'd love to be proven wrong. I would love there to be a situation in the future where someone finds some means of telling a really great Star Wars story that's just as good as the original trilogy. Wouldn't that be wonderful? But there you go. That's The Mandalorian and Grogu's opening weekend at the box office, and it looks to be a box office bomb. That's going to do it for today, guys. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you haven't already, please subscribe to Computing Forever. Hit that notification bell to be notified of future updates. Hit that like button, share the video out there. Take care, and I shall see you in the next video. Bye-bye.